Watch me take you through 21 of the most insane cars Chrysler ever built. Cars that were so far ahead of their time, or so completely bonkers that they never made it past the prototype stage. You're about to see vehicles that could hit 200 miles per hour in the 1990s. Cars powered by jet engines, and designs so wild they look like they belong in a sci-fi movie. Every single one of these was a real, working prototype that you could actually drive. If you're as fascinated by automotive history as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we dive deep into the cars that never were, but should have been. What you're about to see will blow your mind. For decades, Chrysler has been building some of the most innovative and downright crazy prototypes in the automotive world. These weren't just pretty show cars that sat in museums. These were real, working vehicles that engineers actually built, tested, and drove. But for various reasons, whether they were too expensive, too advanced, or just too damn weird, none of these incredible machines ever made it to production. Today, we're counting down 21 of the wildest Chrysler prototypes that were simply too much for the average American driveway. From cars that literally flew through the air to vehicles powered by jet engines, these prototypes represent some of the most ambitious automotive engineering ever attempted. And the crazy part? Most people have never even heard of them. So buckle up, because we're about to take a journey through automotive history that'll make you wonder what could have been if Chrysler had just been a little bit crazier with their production decisions. 21. Chrysler Kronos, 1998. Let's start our countdown with a car that looked like it came straight out of a Batman movie. The Chrysler Kronos was unveiled in 1998, and it was unlike anything Chrysler had ever built before. This wasn't your grandfather's Chrysler. This was a sleek, low-slung luxury coupe that looked more like a European supercar than anything coming out of Detroit. The Kronos featured a dramatically curved roofline that flowed seamlessly into the rear deck, creating this incredibly futuristic silhouette. The front end was dominated by a massive grille that looked like it could swallow small cars whole, while the side profile featured these distinctive character lines that made the car look like it was moving, even when it was standing still. Under the hood, Chrysler packed a powerful V8 engine, but what really made the Kronos special was its interior. The cabin was designed like a luxury yacht, with premium leather everywhere, and this incredible attention to detail that you just didn't see in American cars at the time. The dashboard curved around the driver like a cockpit, and every surface was covered in either leather or real wood trim. But here's why it never made production. Chrysler was going through some serious financial troubles in the late 90s, and building a low-volume luxury coupe just didn't make business sense. The company needed to focus on profitable vehicles like minivans and SUVs, not expensive toys for rich people. It's a shame, because the Kronos could have been Chrysler's answer to the Mercedes CL Class or BMW 8 Series. 20. Valiant AP6 Wayfarer, 1965. Now, let's jump back to 1965 and talk about a car that most Americans have never heard of, but it's one of the coolest wagons Chrysler ever built. The Valiant AP6 Wayfarer was designed for the Australian market, where Chrysler was trying to compete with the local Ford and Holden offerings. This wasn't just any station wagon. The Wayfarer was built on the Valiant platform, which was already known for being tough as nails. But what made this prototype special was its unique styling that combined American muscle car aesthetics with practical Australian sensibilities. The front end featured this aggressive grille design with quad headlights, while the rear had this distinctive tailgate that opened in two sections. The interior was designed for Australian families who needed space for everything from groceries to camping gear. The rear seats could fold completely flat, creating this massive cargo area that could swallow just about anything you could throw at it. And unlike a lot of wagons from that era, the Wayfarer actually looked good. It had these clean, muscular lines that made it look more like a sports car than a family hauler. Chrysler built several working prototypes and even did extensive testing in the Australian outback. The car performed beautifully, handling everything from city driving to rough country roads without breaking a sweat. But corporate politics killed the project. Chrysler's Australian division was having budget issues, and the company decided to focus on sedan models instead of expanding into the wagon market. It's a real shame, because the Wayfarer could have been a game changer in the Australian market. Instead, it remains one of those what-if cars that only exists in the memories of the engineers who built it. 19. Pronto Cruiser, 1998. Here's a car that was so far ahead of its time that it predicted the entire crossover craze by about a decade. The Pronto Cruiser was Chrysler's attempt at creating a compact, versatile vehicle that could handle everything from daily commuting to weekend adventures. This thing looked like nothing else on the road in 1998. It had this high, upright stance that gave it excellent visibility, but it wasn't as big and bulky as a traditional SUV. The design was clean and modern, with these distinctive round headlights and a grille that looked friendly rather than aggressive. The whole car had this approachable, almost cute appearance that would have appealed to younger buyers who wanted something different from the typical sedan or coupe. But the real innovation was in the interior. Chrysler designed the Pronto Cruiser with maximum flexibility in mind. The rear seats could be folded, removed, or reconfigured in multiple ways to accommodate different cargo needs. The dashboard was designed with simplicity in mind, featuring large, easy-to-read gauges and controls that were actually intuitive to use. Under the hood, the Pronto Cruiser featured a small but efficient 4-cylinder engine that delivered decent performance while returning excellent fuel economy. This was back when gas was cheap and nobody cared about fuel efficiency, but Chrysler was already thinking about the future. The prototype performed well in testing, and focus groups loved the concept. But Chrysler's management couldn't figure out how to market it. Was it a car? Was it a truck? Was it an SUV? In 1998, there wasn't really a category for vehicles like this, and Chrysler didn't want to risk confusing consumers with something that didn't fit into established market segments. Looking back, it's clear that the Pronto Cruiser was basically a Honda CR-V or Toyota RAV4 before those vehicles became popular. If Chrysler had been brave enough to bring it to market, they could have owned the compact crossover segment before anyone else even knew it existed. 18. Special GS1 1953. Let's travel back to 1953, when American car design was going through a major transformation. The Special GS1 was Chrysler's attempt to create the ultimate American sports car, and it was unlike anything the company had ever built before. This car was pure eye candy. The GS1 featured a long, low hood that stretched out in front of the driver like the nose of a fighter plane. The grille was this massive chrome affair that dominated the front end, while the headlights were integrated into the fenders in a way that made the whole car look like it was squinting at you. The side profile was all about flowing curves and dramatic proportions that made every other car on the road look boring by comparison. But the GS1 wasn't just about looks. It had the performance to back up its aggressive styling. Under that long hood was a powerful V8 engine that produced more horsepower than most cars of the era could even dream of. The suspension was tuned for performance rather than comfort, and the whole car was designed to be a serious driver's machine rather than a luxury cruiser. The interior was equally impressive, with bucket seats that actually held you in place during spirited driving, and a dashboard that put all the important controls within easy reach of the driver. This was back when most American cars had bench seats and dashboards that looked like they belonged in a living room, so the GS1's driver-focused interior was revolutionary. Chrysler built several working prototypes and even took them to various auto shows around the country. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People loved the aggressive styling and impressive performance. But corporate executives were nervous about building a low-volume sports car when the company was making good money selling practical family sedans. The decision to kill the GS1 was probably a mistake. This car could have competed directly with the Chevrolet Corvette, which was introduced the same year. Instead of getting into the sports car game early, Chrysler waited decades before building anything that could be considered a true performance car. 17. D'Elegance, 1953. The same year Chrysler was working on the sporty GS1, they were also developing something completely different at the other end of the luxury spectrum. The D'Elegance was designed to be the ultimate American luxury car, a vehicle that could compete with the finest European automobiles while still maintaining that distinctive American character. This car was all about elegance and sophistication. The exterior featured clean, flowing lines that avoided the chrome excess that was becoming popular in the early 50s. Instead of trying to look flashy, the D'Elegance aimed for timeless beauty. The proportions were perfect. Long hood, short deck, and a roofline that flowed gracefully from front to rear. The interior was where the D'Elegance really shined. Chrysler spared no expense in creating a cabin that rivaled the finest luxury cars from Europe. The seats were upholstered in the highest quality leather, and every surface was covered in either genuine wood or premium materials. The dashboard featured elegant, easy-to-read gauges, and all the controls had this substantial, high-quality feel that let you know you were in something special. Under the hood, the D'Elegance featured Chrysler's most advanced V8 engine, tuned for smooth, quiet operation rather than maximum performance. The suspension was designed to provide a magic carpet ride that isolated passengers from road imperfections while still maintaining decent handling characteristics. Chrysler built several prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed beautifully, offering a level of refinement that was rare in American automobiles of the era. But the company's executives were concerned about the cost of production. Building a car to this level of quality would have required significant investment in new manufacturing processes and premium materials. In the end, Chrysler decided to focus on volume production rather than low-volume luxury vehicles. It's a decision that probably made sense from a business perspective, but it meant that American buyers lost out on what could have been one of the finest luxury cars ever built in this country. 16. Thomas Special, 1952. Here's a car with a story that sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. The Thomas Special was built in 1952 as a one-off prototype for a wealthy Chrysler enthusiast who wanted something completely unique. What he got was one of the most beautiful cars Chrysler ever created. The Thomas Special was based on Chrysler's existing platform, but everything else was custom built from the ground up. The body was hand-formed by master craftsmen who treated each panel like a work of art. The result was a car with flowing, organic curves that looked more like a sculpture than a vehicle. Every line flowed perfectly into the next, creating this sense of motion even when the car was standing still. The front end featured a distinctive grille that was unlike anything else in Chrysler's lineup. Instead of the typical chrome bars, the Thomas Special had this elegant mesh design that looked both sporty and sophisticated. The headlights were integrated into the fenders in a way that made them look like they were part of the car's natural design rather than afterthoughts. Inside, the Thomas Special was even more impressive. The interior was completely custom, with seats that were individually crafted to fit the owner's specific requirements. The dashboard featured unique gauges and controls that were designed specifically for this car, and every surface was covered in the finest materials available. The engine was a specially tuned version of Chrysler's V8, modified to produce more power while maintaining the smooth, quiet operation that luxury car buyers expected. The suspension was also custom tuned to provide the perfect balance between comfort and performance. Chrysler built just one Thomas Special, and it was everything the customer wanted and more. The car performed beautifully and looked absolutely stunning wherever it went. But because it was a one-off custom build, it was incredibly expensive to produce. The cost of building just one car was more than most people made in several years. The Thomas Special proved that Chrysler had the talent and capability to build world-class custom automobiles, but it also showed why such vehicles would never be practical for mass production. Today, the Thomas Special is considered one of the most beautiful cars Chrysler ever created, even though most people have never heard of it. 15. Chrysler C200, 1952. The early 1950s were a time of incredible innovation in the automotive industry, and Chrysler was right in the thick of it with prototypes like the C200. This car was designed to showcase Chrysler's vision of what American automobiles could become in the future. The C200 was all about advanced engineering and futuristic design. The exterior featured clean, aerodynamic lines that were way ahead of their time. While other manufacturers were still building cars that looked like they were designed in the 1940s, the C200 looked like it could have been built in the 1960s. The front end featured a low, wide grille that gave the car an aggressive, purposeful appearance, while the side profile was all about smooth, flowing curves. But the real innovation was under the skin. The C200 featured advanced suspension technology that provided better handling and ride quality than anything else on the road. The engine was a specially developed V8 that produced impressive power while maintaining good fuel economy, something that was rare in the early 50s when gas was cheap and nobody worried about efficiency. The interior was designed with the driver in mind. Instead of the typical bench seat setup that was common in the era, the C200 featured individual bucket seats that provided better support during spirited driving. The dashboard was clean and functional, with gauges and controls that were actually easy to read and use. Chrysler built several C200 prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed exceptionally well, offering a level of performance and refinement that was years ahead of the competition. But the company's executives were concerned about public acceptance. The C200's advanced design was so different from what people expected from an American car that they worried it might be too radical for mainstream buyers. In retrospect, this was probably a mistake. The C200's design language eventually became mainstream in the automotive industry, but by then, other manufacturers had taken the lead in advanced automotive design. If Chrysler had been brave enough to bring the C200 to market, they could have established themselves as the leader in automotive innovation. 14. Chrysler Dart, 1956. Don't confuse this with the Dodge Dart that came later. The 1956 Chrysler Dart was a completely different animal. This prototype was Chrysler's attempt to create the ultimate American sports car, and it was unlike anything the company had built before or since. The Dart was pure aggression on wheels. The front end featured this massive grille that looked like it could swallow other cars whole, while the hood was dominated by a prominent power bulge that hinted at the serious engine underneath. The side profile was all about muscular curves and dramatic proportions that made the car look like it was ready to pounce on unsuspecting prey. But what really set the Dart apart was its advanced engineering. This car featured independent suspension at all four corners, something that was incredibly rare in American cars of the 1950s. The result was handling that was light years ahead of anything else coming out of Detroit. The Dart could corner like a European sports car while still providing the straight-line performance that American buyers expected. Under the hood was a specially developed V8 engine that produced massive amounts of horsepower. This wasn't just a regular production engine with a few modifications. It was a completely new design that was built specifically for the Dart. The engine featured advanced technology like fuel injection and high compression pistons that allowed it to produce power levels that were unheard of in the mid-1950s. The interior was designed for serious driving. The seats were individual buckets that held you in place during hard cornering, and the dashboard featured a full complement of performance gauges that let the driver monitor every aspect of the car's operation. This was back when most American cars had speedometers that only went up to 85 miles per hour, so the Dart's 150 miles per hour speedometer was pretty radical. Chrysler built several Dart prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed incredibly well, offering a level of performance that wouldn't be matched by production American cars for another decade. But the company's executives were nervous about building such an extreme performance car. They worried that it would be too expensive, too impractical, and too dangerous for average buyers. Looking back, the Dart could have been America's answer to the European sports cars that were starting to gain popularity in the 1950s. Instead, Chrysler played it safe and focused on building practical family cars, leaving the sports car market to other manufacturers. 13. Chrysler Plainsman, 1956. Here's a car that was so far ahead of its time that it basically invented the modern SUV concept 30 years before SUVs became popular. The Chrysler Plainsman was designed in 1956 as a versatile vehicle that could handle everything from daily commuting to serious off-road adventures. The Plainsman looked like nothing else on the road in 1956. It had this high, upright stance that provided excellent visibility, but it wasn't as crude and truck-like as the few four-wheel drive vehicles that were available at the time. The design was clean and modern, with a distinctive grille and headlight arrangement that made it instantly recognizable. But what really made the Plainsman special was its versatility. The interior was designed to be completely reconfigurable, depending on what you needed to carry. The rear seats could be folded flat to create a massive cargo area, or they could be removed entirely to turn the Plainsman into a pickup truck. The tailgate could be opened in multiple configurations, and there were tie-down points throughout the cargo area for securing different types of loads. Under the hood, the Plainsman featured a powerful V8 engine that was mated to a sophisticated four-wheel drive system. This wasn't just a simple transfer case setup, it was an advanced system that could automatically distribute power between the front and rear wheels depending on traction conditions. The suspension was designed to provide good ride quality on the road while still being capable of handling serious off-road terrain. Chrysler built several Plainsman prototypes and tested them in conditions ranging from city streets to mountain trails. The vehicles performed exceptionally well, offering a level of capability that wouldn't be matched by production vehicles for decades. But the company's executives couldn't figure out how to market such a vehicle. In 1956, there wasn't really a market for vehicles that combined car-like comfort with truck-like capability. The Plainsman was basically a modern SUV before anyone knew they wanted SUVs. If Chrysler had been brave enough to bring it to market, they could have created an entirely new vehicle category and dominated it for years. Instead, they played it safe and left the field open for other manufacturers to eventually figure out what the Plainsman had already proven. 12. Chrysler Falcon, 1955. The mid-1950s were a time of incredible optimism in America, and nowhere was this more evident than in the automotive industry's fascination with aviation-inspired design. The Chrysler Falcon was the ultimate expression of this trend, a car that looked more like a fighter jet than a traditional automobile. The Falcon's design was absolutely radical for 1955. The front end featured this pointed nose that looked like it could cut through the air, while the headlights were integrated into the fenders in a way that made them look like the air intakes on a jet engine. The side profile was dominated by these dramatic fins that started at the doors and swept back to the rear of the car, creating this sense of motion that made the Falcon look fast, even when it was parked. But the Falcon wasn't just about looks. It had the performance to match its aggressive styling. Under the hood was a specially developed V8 engine that featured advanced technology like fuel injection and high compression pistons. This engine produced power levels that were unheard of in production cars of the era, giving the Falcon acceleration that could embarrass much more expensive sports cars. The interior was designed like an aircraft cockpit, with the driver surrounded by gauges and controls that monitored every aspect of the car's performance. The seats were individual buckets that provided excellent support during spirited driving, and the steering wheel was a thin-rimmed affair that looked like it belonged in a race car rather than a street vehicle. Chrysler built several Falcon prototypes and took them to auto shows around the country. The public reaction was incredible. People had never seen anything like it. The Falcon looked like it had driven straight out of a science fiction movie, and it had the performance to back up its futuristic appearance. But despite the positive public reaction, Chrysler's executives were nervous about putting such a radical design into production. They worried that the Falcon's extreme styling would limit its appeal to mainstream buyers, and they were concerned about the cost of manufacturing such an advanced vehicle. In the end, Chrysler decided to play it safe and focus on more conventional designs. It's a decision that probably made sense from a business perspective, but it meant that American buyers missed out on what could have been one of the most exciting cars of the 1950s. 11. DeSoto Adventurer II, 1954. While Chrysler was working on various prototypes under their own brand, they were also experimenting with their DeSoto division. The Adventurer II was DeSoto's attempt to create a halo car that would showcase the brand's performance capabilities and attract younger buyers to DeSoto showrooms. The Adventurer II was a stunning piece of automotive design. The exterior featured clean, flowing lines that avoided the chrome excess that was becoming popular in the mid-1950s. Instead of trying to look flashy, the Adventurer II aimed for sophisticated elegance. The front end featured a distinctive grille design that was both sporty and refined, while the side profile showcased perfect proportions that made the car look balanced and purposeful. Under the hood, the Adventurer packed serious performance. DeSoto's engineers developed a specially tuned version of their V8 engine that produced significantly more power than the standard production engines. This wasn't just a matter of adding a few modifications. It was a comprehensive reworking of the engine that included changes to the camshaft, pistons, and cylinder heads. The interior was designed to appeal to performance-oriented buyers. The seats were individual buckets that provided excellent support during spirited driving, and the dashboard featured a full complement of gauges that let the driver monitor engine temperature, oil pressure, and other vital signs. The steering wheel was a thin-rimmed affair that provided excellent feel and control. DeSoto built several Adventurer II prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed exceptionally well, offering a level of performance that was rare in American automobiles of the era. The handling was particularly impressive, with the car feeling much more nimble and responsive than typical American cars of the time. But despite the prototype's impressive performance and stunning looks, DeSoto's management decided not to put the Adventurer II into production. They were concerned about the cost of building such a specialized vehicle, and they worried that it might not appeal to DeSoto's traditional customer base. This was probably a mistake. The Adventurer II could have helped establish DeSoto as a performance brand and attracted younger buyers who might have otherwise gone to other manufacturers. Instead, DeSoto continued to focus on conventional family cars, and the brand eventually disappeared entirely. 10. Newport Dual Cowl Phaeton, 1941. Let's jump back to 1941 and talk about one of the most elegant cars Chrysler ever built. The Newport Dual Cowl Phaeton was designed as the ultimate luxury convertible, a car that combined sophisticated styling with advanced engineering and premium materials. This car was pure class from every angle. The exterior featured long, flowing lines that created this sense of elegance and sophistication that was rare in American automobiles of the era. The front end was dominated by a distinctive grille that looked both sporty and refined, while the side profile showcased perfect proportions that made the car look like it was in motion, even when it was standing still. But what really made the Newport special was its dual cowl design. This meant that the car had two separate windshields, one for the front passengers and another for the rear passengers. This wasn't just a styling gimmick, it actually provided better protection from wind and weather for rear seat passengers when the top was down. The rear passengers also got their own set of controls for things like ventilation and lighting. The interior was absolutely luxurious. Every surface was covered in the finest materials available, from premium leather seats to genuine wood trim on the dashboard and door panels. The front seats were individual buckets that provided excellent comfort and support, while the rear seats were designed more like a luxury sofa that could accommodate two passengers in complete comfort. Under the hood, the Newport featured Chrysler's most advanced straight-8 engine, tuned for smooth, quiet operation rather than maximum performance. This engine was known for its refinement and reliability, and it provided the kind of effortless power delivery that luxury car buyers expected. Chrysler built several Newport prototypes and used them for testing and promotional purposes. The cars performed beautifully, offering a level of luxury and sophistication that was unmatched by anything else in Chrysler's lineup. But the company's executives were concerned about the cost of production and the limited market for such an expensive vehicle. The decision not to produce the Newport was probably understandable given the economic uncertainties of 1941, but it meant that Chrysler missed an opportunity to establish themselves in the ultra-luxury market. The Newport could have competed directly with the finest European luxury cars while offering distinctly American character and engineering. 9. Chrysler Thunderbolt, 1941. Now, we're getting into the really wild stuff. The Chrysler Thunderbolt was one of the most radical cars ever built by an American manufacturer, a vehicle that looked like it had driven straight out of a Buck Rogers comic strip. The Thunderbolt's design was absolutely revolutionary for 1941. The car featured a completely enclosed body with no visible door handles, no running boards, and no external spare tire. All features that were considered essential on cars of that era. Instead, the Thunderbolt had this smooth, aerodynamic shape that looked more like an aircraft fuselage than a traditional automobile. The front end was dominated by a pointed nose that housed retractable headlights, a feature that wouldn't become common on production cars for another 20 years. The side profile was all about smooth, flowing curves that created this sense of speed and motion. The rear end featured integrated taillights and a distinctive spoiler that helped improve the car's aerodynamics. But the really wild part was how you got into the car. Instead of traditional doors, the Thunderbolt featured a roof that hinged forward, allowing passengers to step down into the cockpit-like interior. This wasn't just a styling gimmick. It actually made the car more structurally rigid by eliminating the need for door openings in the body. The interior was designed like an aircraft cockpit, with the driver and passenger sitting low in individual bucket seats. The dashboard featured a full complement of gauges and controls, all arranged in a logical, easy-to-read layout. The steering wheel was a thin-rimmed affair that looked more like something you'd find in a race car than a street vehicle. Under the hood, the Thunderbolt featured a specially developed straight-8 engine that was tuned for both performance and efficiency. The engine was mated to a semi-automatic transmission that was years ahead of its time. Chrysler built 5 Thunderbolt prototypes and used them for promotional purposes at auto shows around the country. The public reaction was incredible. People had never seen anything like it. The Thunderbolt looked like it had come from the future, and it generated enormous publicity for Chrysler. But despite the positive reaction, Chrysler never seriously considered putting the Thunderbolt into production. The car was simply too radical and too expensive to build for the mass market. Instead, it served as a showcase for Chrysler's engineering capabilities and design vision. 8. Lamborghini Portofino, 1987. Here's where things get really interesting. During the late 1980s, Chrysler actually owned Lamborghini, and they used this opportunity to create some truly wild prototypes that combined Italian exotic car styling with American engineering know-how. The Portofino was the result of this collaboration, and it was unlike anything either company had built before. The exterior design was pure Italian exotica, low, wide, and aggressive, with sharp angles and dramatic proportions that made it look like a stealth fighter on wheels. The front end featured pop-up headlights and a distinctive grille that left no doubt about the car's performance intentions. But under that Italian bodywork was American engineering. Chrysler's engineers developed a specially tuned version of their V8 engine that produced massive amounts of horsepower while maintaining the reliability that American buyers expected. The engine was mated to a sophisticated all-wheel drive system that could put all that power to the ground effectively. The interior was a perfect blend of Italian style and American practicality. The seats were upholstered in the finest Italian leather, but they were designed with American comfort standards in mind. The dashboard featured elegant Italian design cues, but all the controls were logically arranged and easy to use. Performance was absolutely incredible. The Portofino could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds and had a top speed of over 200 miles per hour. This was supercar performance that could compete with anything from Ferrari or Porsche, but with the reliability and serviceability that came from American engineering. Chrysler built several Portofino prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed beautifully, offering exotic car performance with better reliability than most Italian supercars of the era. But the project was killed when Chrysler decided to sell Lamborghini to focus on their core automotive business. It's a shame, because the Portofino could have been America's first true supercar. Instead, it remains one of those what-if cars that showed what was possible when American and Italian automotive expertise was combined. 7. Chrysler LeBaron Turbine, 1977. The 1970s were a tough time for the American automotive industry, with emissions regulations and fuel economy standards forcing manufacturers to rethink their approach to performance. Chrysler's response was typically unconventional. They decided to experiment with turbine power. The LeBaron turbine was based on Chrysler's existing LeBaron coupe, but everything under the hood was completely different. Instead of a traditional piston engine, this car was powered by a gas turbine that spun at incredible speeds and produced power in a completely different way than conventional engines. The turbine engine was incredibly smooth and quiet in operation. Unlike piston engines that have all sorts of reciprocating parts creating vibration and noise, the turbine simply spun at a constant speed, creating this incredibly refined power delivery that was unlike anything most people had ever experienced. The engine could run on almost any combustible fuel, from gasoline to diesel to jet fuel. Performance was impressive too. The turbine produced substantial torque across a wide RPM range, giving the LeBaron turbine excellent acceleration and highway performance. The car could cruise effortlessly at high speeds while returning decent fuel economy, something that was becoming increasingly important in the wake of the oil crises of the 1970s. But the turbine engine also had some significant drawbacks. It took a long time to spool up from idle, which made the car feel sluggish in stop-and-go traffic. The engine also ran extremely hot, which created challenges for packaging and cooling. And perhaps most importantly, turbine engines were incredibly expensive to manufacture compared to conventional piston engines. Chrysler built several LeBaron turbine prototypes and tested them extensively. The cars performed well in highway driving situations, but the engine's characteristics made it less suitable for typical American driving patterns. The company ultimately decided that the technology wasn't ready for mass production, and the project was shelved. Looking back, the LeBaron turbine was probably ahead of its time. Turbine technology has continued to improve, and modern gas turbines are much more responsive and efficient than the 1970s versions. But Chrysler's early experiments with this technology showed that they were willing to think outside the box when it came to solving automotive challenges. 6. Chrysler Turboflite, 1961. The early 1960s were the height of America's fascination with the space age, and the Chrysler Turboflite was the ultimate expression of this obsession. This car looked like it had been designed by NASA engineers rather than automotive stylists. The Turboflite's design was absolutely radical. The car featured a completely enclosed cockpit with no visible pillars or door frames, just a continuous glass canopy that provided 360-degree visibility. The body was shaped like a rocket ship, with a pointed nose and fins that swept back from the passenger compartment. The whole car looked like it was ready to blast off into orbit. But the really wild part was the propulsion system. Instead of a conventional engine, the Turboflite was powered by a gas turbine that was mounted in the rear of the car. This turbine spun at over 60,000 RPM and produced power that was transmitted to the wheels through a sophisticated drivetrain that was unlike anything else on the road. The interior was designed like a spacecraft cockpit. The driver and passenger sat in individual seats that were surrounded by gauges and controls that monitored every aspect of the car's operation. The steering wheel was replaced by a joystick-like controller that looked more like something you'd find in a fighter jet than a streetcar. Getting into the Turboflite was an experience in itself. The entire canopy hinged forward, allowing passengers to step down into the cockpit. Once inside, the canopy closed over them, creating this completely enclosed environment that felt more like being in an aircraft than a car. Chrysler built one Turboflite prototype and used it for promotional purposes at auto shows and special events. The car generated enormous publicity and showed that Chrysler was thinking seriously about the future of automotive design and propulsion. But the Turboflite was never intended for production. It was purely a concept car designed to showcase Chrysler's vision of what cars might look like in the future. The turbine propulsion system was still too experimental and expensive for mass production, and the radical design would have been impossible to manufacture using conventional automotive production methods. Still, the Turboflite remains one of the most visually striking cars ever built, and it perfectly captured the optimism and technological enthusiasm of the early 1960s. 5. Chrysler Norseman, 1956. Here's a car with one of the most tragic stories in automotive history. The Chrysler Norseman was designed to be the ultimate expression of 1950s automotive luxury and style, but it ended up at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean before anyone ever got to drive it. The Norseman was built by the famous Italian coach builder Ghia, and it represented the pinnacle of automotive craftsmanship. Every panel was hand-formed by master craftsmen, and the attention to detail was absolutely incredible. The exterior featured flowing, organic curves that looked more like sculpture than automotive design. The proportions were perfect, with a long hood, short deck, and a roofline that flowed gracefully from front to rear. But what really made the Norseman special was its advanced engineering. The car featured a completely pillarless design, with no visible supports between the front and rear windows. This created an incredibly airy, open feeling in the interior, while maintaining structural integrity through advanced engineering techniques that were years ahead of their time. The interior was absolutely luxurious. The seats were upholstered in the finest Italian leather, and every surface was covered in premium materials. The dashboard featured elegant, easy-to-read gauges, and all the controls had this substantial, high-quality feel that lets you know you were in something truly special. Under the hood, the Norseman featured Chrysler's most advanced V8 engine, tuned for smooth, quiet operation. The suspension was designed to provide a magic carpet ride that isolated passengers from road imperfections while still maintaining decent handling characteristics. The Norseman was completed in Italy and loaded aboard the luxury liner SS Andrea Doria for shipment to the United States. But on July 25, 1956, the Andrea Doria collided with another ship off the coast of Nantucket and sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The Norseman went down with the ship and was never recovered. It's one of the great tragedies of automotive history. The Norseman represented the absolute pinnacle of 1950s automotive design and engineering, and it was lost before anyone ever got to experience what it was like to drive. Photos and design drawings are all that remain of what could have been one of the most beautiful cars ever built. 4. Chrysler Atlantic, 1995. By the mid-1990s, Chrysler was going through a renaissance under the leadership of people like Bob Lutz, who believed that cars should be emotional as well as practical. The Atlantic was the ultimate expression of this philosophy, a car that combined modern engineering with classic 1930s styling cues. The Atlantic's design was absolutely stunning. The car featured flowing, organic curves that were inspired by the great French coach-built cars of the 1930s, but executed with modern materials and manufacturing techniques. The front end featured a distinctive grille that looked both classic and contemporary, while the side profile showcased perfect proportions that made the car look like it was in motion even when it was standing still. But what really made the Atlantic special was its engine. Under that long, elegant hood was a straight 8 engine that was unlike anything else in the automotive world. This wasn't just a regular production engine. It was a completely new design that combined two 4-cylinder engines on a common crankshaft. The result was an engine that was incredibly smooth and refined, with a distinctive sound that was unlike anything else on the road. The interior was equally impressive. The cabin featured premium materials throughout, with leather seats that were both comfortable and supportive. The dashboard was designed with classic styling cues, but modern functionality, featuring easy-to-read gauges and intuitive controls. Performance was impressive too. The Atlantic could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds and had a top speed of over 160 miles per hour. But more importantly, the car felt special to drive. The steering was precise and communicative. The suspension provided excellent handling without sacrificing ride quality, and the engine delivered power in a smooth, linear fashion that made every drive feel like an event. Chrysler built one Atlantic prototype and used it for auto shows and promotional events. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. People loved the combination of classic styling and modern performance. Automotive journalists raved about the car's design and engineering. But despite the positive reaction, Chrysler never put the Atlantic into production. The company was concerned about the cost of manufacturing such a specialized vehicle, and they worried about the limited market for a car that was more about emotion than practicality. It's a shame, because the Atlantic could have been Chrysler's halo car, a vehicle that showcased the company's design and engineering capabilities while attracting buyers to Chrysler showrooms. Instead, it remains one of the most beautiful cars that never was. 3. Chrysler ME412, 2004. Now we're getting into supercar territory. The ME412 was Chrysler's attempt to build a world-class supercar that could compete with anything from Ferrari, Lamborghini, or McLaren. And based on the specifications, it would have been absolutely incredible. The ME412 looked like it had been designed by aliens. The exterior featured sharp, angular lines and dramatic proportions that made it look more like a stealth fighter than a car. The front end was dominated by a massive air intake that fed the engine, while the side profile featured distinctive gull-wing doors that opened upward rather than outward. But the real story was under the hood. The ME412 was powered by a quad-turbocharged V12 engine that produced an absolutely insane 850 horsepower. This wasn't just a modified production engine. It was a completely new design that was built specifically for this car. The engine featured advanced technology like variable valve timing and direct injection that allowed it to produce massive amounts of power while still meeting emissions regulations. Performance numbers were mind-blowing. Chrysler claimed that the ME412 could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.9 seconds and had a top speed of over 248 miles per hour. These were numbers that could compete with the fastest cars in the world, and they came from a company that was better known for minivans than supercars. The interior was designed for serious performance driving. The seats were racing-style buckets that held you in place during hard cornering, and the dashboard featured a full complement of performance gauges that let the driver monitor every aspect of the car's operation. The steering wheel was a flat-bottomed affair that looked like it belonged in a Formula One car. Chrysler built one ME412 prototype and displayed it at auto shows around the world. The reaction was incredible. People couldn't believe that Chrysler had built something so extreme. Automotive journalists were blown away by the car's performance potential and advanced engineering. But despite the positive reaction, Chrysler never put the ME412 into production. The company was going through financial difficulties at the time, and building a low-volume supercar just didn't make business sense. The project was shelved, and the prototype was eventually sold to a private collector. It's one of the great what-ifs of automotive history. The ME412 could have established Chrysler as a serious player in the supercar market and shown the world that American manufacturers could build cars that competed with the best from Europe. Instead, it remains a one-off prototype that showed what might have been. 2. Chrysler Airflow EV 2022. Let's jump to the present day and talk about Chrysler's most recent wild prototype. The Airflow EV represents Chrysler's vision of what electric vehicles could become, a car that combines advanced technology with luxurious comfort and distinctive styling. The Airflow EV's design is all about clean, modern elegance. The exterior features smooth, flowing lines that are optimized for aerodynamic efficiency while still looking distinctive and attractive. The front end features a closed-off grille area that houses advanced lighting technology, while the side profile showcases perfect proportions that make the car look both substantial and elegant. But what really makes the Airflow EV special is its advanced technology. The interior features a massive curved display screen that spans the entire width of the dashboard, providing information and entertainment for all passengers. The seats are designed for maximum comfort during long trips, and the cabin is filled with premium materials and advanced features like ambient lighting and premium audio systems. The electric powertrain is designed to provide both performance and efficiency. Chrysler claims that the Airflow EV will be capable of over 400 miles of range on a single charge, with fast charging capability that can add hundreds of miles of range in just a few minutes. The car features all-wheel drive and advanced traction control systems that provide excellent performance in all weather conditions. The interior is designed around the concept of a living room on wheels. The seats can be configured in multiple ways to accommodate different passenger needs, and the advanced infotainment system can provide personalized entertainment for each passenger. The car even features advanced autonomous driving capabilities that can handle most driving situations without human intervention. Chrysler has built several Airflow EV prototypes and has been testing them extensively. The company claims that the car performs exceptionally well, offering a level of luxury and technology that could compete with the best electric vehicles from Tesla, Mercedes, or BMW. But as of now, Chrysler hasn't committed to putting the Airflow EV into production. The company is still evaluating the market and determining whether there's sufficient demand for such a vehicle. Given Chrysler's history of building incredible prototypes that never make it to production, there's no guarantee that the Airflow EV will ever be available to consumers. 1. Chrysler Turbine Car, 1963. And now, we come to the most famous and most incredible Chrysler prototype of all time, the Turbine Car. This wasn't just a concept car that sat in auto shows. Chrysler actually built 55 of these things and let regular people drive them around for 2 years. It was one of the most ambitious automotive experiments in history. The turbine car looked like it had driven straight out of a science fiction movie. The exterior featured clean, futuristic lines that were unlike anything else on the road in 1963. The front end was dominated by a distinctive grille that housed the air intake for the turbine engine, while the side profile featured elegant proportions that made the car look both modern and timeless. But the real magic was under the hood. Instead of a conventional piston engine, the turbine car was powered by a gas turbine that spun at 44,600 RPM and produced power in a completely different way than any other car on the road. The engine was incredibly smooth and quiet. So quiet that Chrysler had to add artificial engine noise so that pedestrians could hear the car coming. The turbine engine had some incredible advantages. It could run on almost any combustible fuel. gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, even tequila in one famous demonstration. It had only 1/5 as many moving parts as a conventional engine, which meant it should have been much more reliable. And it produced virtually no emissions, making it incredibly clean burning compared to piston engines of the era. Performance was impressive too. The turbine car could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 10 seconds, which was respectable for the era. But more importantly, the car felt completely different to drive. The turbine provided instant torque at any RPM, and the power delivery was incredibly smooth and linear. Chrysler selected 203 families from around the country to participate in the program. Each family got to drive a turbine car for 3 months, using it as their regular daily driver. The program was designed to test how the cars would perform in real-world conditions with regular drivers. The results were mixed. Most drivers loved the smooth, quiet operation of the turbine engine, and the cars proved to be reasonably reliable in everyday use. But there were also some significant drawbacks. The engine took a long time to spool up from idle, which made the car feel sluggish in stop-and-go traffic. The engine also consumed a lot of fuel at idle and low speeds, which hurt fuel economy in city driving. More importantly, the turbine engines were incredibly expensive to manufacture. Each engine cost about 10 times as much to build as a conventional piston engine, which would have made the cars prohibitively expensive for most buyers. When the program ended in 1966, Chrysler collected all the cars and destroyed most of them. Only 9 turbine cars survive today, and they're considered among the most valuable and significant cars in automotive history. The Turbine Car program showed that Chrysler was willing to think completely outside the box when it came to automotive propulsion. While the technology wasn't ready for mass production in the 1960s, it demonstrated that there were alternatives to conventional piston engines, and it paved the way for future developments in automotive technology. And there you have it. 21 of the wildest, most incredible prototypes that Chrysler ever built, but never sold to the public. From jet-powered cars to vehicles that looked like they came from outer space. These prototypes show that Chrysler has always been willing to push the boundaries of what's possible in automotive design and engineering. What's really amazing is that every single one of these cars was a real, working prototype that you could actually start up and drive. These weren't just pretty show cars or design studies. They were fully functional vehicles that demonstrated advanced technology and innovative thinking. Some of these prototypes were ahead of their time by decades. The Plainsman basically invented the modern SUV concept 30 years before SUVs became popular. The Pronto Cruiser predicted the crossover craze by about 10 years. And the turbine car showed that there were alternatives to conventional engines long before anyone was worried about emissions or fuel economy. Others were just too extreme or too expensive for mass production. The ME412 would have been an incredible supercar, but Chrysler couldn't justify the cost of building it. The Atlantic was one of the most beautiful cars ever designed, but it would have been too expensive for most buyers. And some, like the Norseman, were lost to circumstances beyond anyone's control. We'll never know how incredible that car might have been, because it's sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. But what all these prototypes show is that Chrysler has never been afraid to think big and try new things. While other manufacturers were playing it safe, Chrysler was building cars with jet engines, experimenting with radical new designs, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. It makes you wonder what the automotive world would look like today if Chrysler had been brave enough to put more of these incredible prototypes into production. We might be driving turbine-powered cars, or SUVs that were invented in the 1950s, or supercars that could outrun anything from Europe. Instead, most of these incredible machines exist only in the memories of the engineers who built them and the few lucky people who got to drive them. But they serve as a reminder that the automotive industry is capable of incredible innovation when manufacturers are willing to take risks and think outside the box. What do you think? Which of these wild Chrysler prototypes would you most want to see in production? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed learning about these incredible cars that never were, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into automotive history. There are plenty more amazing prototypes and concept cars out there that deserve to have their stories told, and I'll be covering them in future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.